Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Welcome to our special, The Future for Artificial Intelligence. And if we could have a longer title, it would almost be something like The Future for Artificial Intelligence in a post-MAGA world, or in the new Trump golden era. Because it seems as if Trump has gone all in on AI. Among the flurry of executive orders, one of the orders was removing barriers to American leadership and artificial intelligence. And it does a lot, and we'll break it down with two of our guests here. But let me just read this beginning part here, just to give a little flavor of what Trump is thinking here. He said, the United States has long been at the forefront of artificial intelligence innovation, driven by the strength of our free markets, world-class research institutions, and entrepreneurial spirit. To maintain this leadership, we must develop AI systems that are free from ideological bias or engineered social agendas. We'll get back to that at the end of the show. With the right government policies, we can solidify our position as the future leader in AI and secure a brighter future for all Americans. This order revokes certain existing AI policies and directives that act as barriers to American AI innovation. We'll get to that in a second. Clearing a path for the United States to act decisively to retain global leadership in AI. It is the policy of the United States to sustain and enhance America's global AI dominance in order to promote human flourishing. Love that. We talk about that all the time. Human flourishing, economic competitiveness, and national security. Okay, so that is Trump's opening stance on AI. Now, I have a bit of a tension in this entire special here. Every special that we've done on artificial intelligence, we've done a couple of them, it's from my perspective, the dangers of AI. Because you got most of the world out there is like, AI, it's amazing. Look at this technological advancement. It's great. So I just felt the need to be like, whoa, pump the brakes here for a second. And it's also my conservative instinct. I think real life is better than fake life. In general, I have a repulsion to anything new and high tech. We've all lived through the pros and cons of technology and technological advancements. And of course, technology is great, right? My kid was in the NICU for a couple weeks. His life was saved with technology, of course. We've also seen how destructive a lot of technology has been to our lives. So it's interesting to see how we figure this out. Neil Postman, who's my favorite person who writes about this type of stuff, is back in like the 60s, 70s, 80s. He said, every technology is both a burden and a blessing. Not either or, but this and that. And it takes me time to get to that point. Now, with AI, my first instinct is to push back. Like, no, this is bad. I only see the dystopian future that AI can bring. And once I kind of work through that, then I think, oh yeah, but man, can this be stopped? Neil Postman back in the 50s, he said, I don't think any of us can do much about the rapid growth of new technology. That was in the 50s. So the best thing we can do now is to help all of us understand how we can use this stuff wisely, and also make sure that we, America, are the ones who are in charge of the new technology. We in America, we've been on the forefront of AI with ChatGPT and others that are out there. There's a bunch out there now, right? Artificial intelligence programs that regular people can use. But something else I've come to realize is that every new technology that comes around, we have no idea how it will ultimately be used. Right? Think about, could the founders of the internet have really, in the late 60s and 70s, have envisioned what the internet is today? There's no way. We have to think like that with AI, right? We think we have some idea of how it can be used, and we're like, oh, maybe it can improve some automated office tasks, or it can be used to write code, or maybe AI can use to like screen or scan cancer screening tests better than human cans. Like, that's the best that we can think of. But give this AI a few years, computer processing speeds double every 2 years. We'll have no idea what AI will be capable of very soon. So all that being said, I therefore put more importance not on stopping it, because I don't think it can be, but on making sure that we are the ones who are in charge of it, and that America is the forefront and leader, and not China. It's similar, we did a special the other day on Greenland. and having greater control over the Arctic Ocean and the shipping channels and having military supremacy on the top of the planet. And we've talked about this idea of the American empire, and some people are pretty knee-jerk against the idea of empire. But you got to reframe the question. It's not should we or shouldn't we have an American empire. The question is who should be the biggest empire in the country, right? So it's not should we or shouldn't we have control of the Arctic shipping lanes. It's who do you want to have control over the Arctic shipping lanes? Do you want America to have control or do you want China to have control? Same thing with AI. It's not, oh, should we or shouldn't we have AI? It's coming. Who do you want to have control over it? And who do you want to be in charge of setting the future of what AI will ultimately look like beyond what we can even conceive today? China came up with their own version of a chat GTP. It's called DeepSeek. We're going to talk with our guest coming up next about what DeepSeek is. My understanding is it's the biggest advantage for China and DeepSeek is the cost of it, the cost to develop and the cost to use it. So if you're a different country around the world and you're in no place to develop your own artificial intelligence systems, are you going to go to the American version that's very expensive? Or are you going to use the Chinese version that's literally 1% of the price? I'm not kidding with 1%. DeepSeek claims that they produced this with $5 million. And ChatGPT cost $500 million. And also, of course, it's in China, right? So who knows what type of censorship and propaganda they'll be using and spreading through it around the world. But this is why it's important that America maintains its technological supremacy over the world. DeepSeek could easily be a part of China's Belt and Road Initiative of technology, right? Add it to the list, just like TikTok, right? We have our own social media companies in America to worry about, but then TikTok comes in, and now we have all those problems plus the propaganda part of it. And spreading a communist worldview, and they could be doing that with their DeepSeek artificial intelligence as well. Chamath was on Tucker Carlson's podcast recently, and he made a pretty convincing argument that appealed not only to my patriotism, which is good, I want America to be the best, but spoke to even more than that. Again, it's not, my instinct is no to AI, right? Because that's just my nature. I want to live on a farm with chickens and goats. I wish cell phones were never invented, but that's just not reality. So if that's not the case, then we just got to start thinking like this.
It is important for all 330 million Americans to take a step back and acknowledge this one truth. And I think that it is completely a canonical statement that is inviolate for being an American. We are the single most important country in existence in the world. We are the most important country today. We must be the most important country tomorrow. Period. If you say that enough times and you believe it, then there are two things that underpin that, and I think only two. We are the single most vibrant economy in the world, and we are the single strongest military in the world. And if you can agree to those two things, which I think should be non-controversial, if you say, meaning, like if I said to you, hey, Tucker, we make the best oranges and burritos in America. That does not yield the most important country in the world. If I said we make the best shoes and the best flat panel TVs, that does not equate to the most powerful country in the world. But if I said to you, we have the strongest and most vibrant economy and the strongest and most powerful military, that is the strongest and most important country in the world.
Yes.
And then there is only one thing that gives you both of those two things, which is technological supremacy.
That term, technological supremacy. Now, he's a Silicon Valley guy, Chamath is. So his instinct is going to be that, the most important thing is technology. But I think he's also right. It's not the only thing that matters. But when it comes to power, then it might be. How powerful is Panama? We want the Panama Canal back. Was their military going to stop us? Oh, wait, they don't have one. How powerful is Denmark? What's Denmark going to do to stop us? Nothing, right? Nothing compared to us. So if we want to win, we need to make sure we maintain our technological supremacy, and I always want to win. But how do we win the AI battle? What do we do? What does it even look like? Chamath talked about different things that can be either They could be used for good or bad, right? So for example, gene editing. Is gene editing good? We can talk about that. Like, maybe not, but probably not. Right? Was my instinct like no? But he made the point that in Silicon Valley, an American company came up with this, and then they were squabbling over some like legal issues or whatever. Meanwhile, China came in, and now they're the leader of gene editing. Well, I don't like it. Definitely don't like that. So we better become the leaders of gene editing. We need to be the ones who are in charge of that technology, because we don't want China to be the ones in charge of it. So it's not technology good or bad, or even technology win or lose. It's who has it or who doesn't. We need to be the ones in charge. And then, of course, another call to increase the importance of virtue of we the people, so that we can use these tools wisely. We need to develop them, we need to own them, we need to control them, and we need to use them in a way that, as Donald Trump said, leads to more human flourishing. It's a tall order, but that's what we need to do. We'll talk about the morality of it coming up in the last segment, but we have two AI experts coming up next to tell us what the problems are with DeepSeek and the future of American technological supremacy. That's next right here on The First TV.
Make the United States a manufacturing superpower and the world capital of artificial intelligence and crypto.
Mark Beckman is here. He's the CEO of DMA United, and author of the book, Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. Mark, great to talk to you, sir. Thank you for being here. I think most normal, regular people are still early on this AI thing, and we've kind of heard of it, and like I've dabbled in ChatGPT, and Perplexity is one that I've used a little bit here and there to like minor significance. So I don't even think we understand fully how to grasp AI and what it is and what it could be. How do you think about this?
Mike, first, I want to thank you for having me on your show. I'm a big fan of yours. I listen to you every morning starting at 6 a.m. I never miss a day. I love you.
Thank you, brother.
And I want to tell you that we are on the precipice of a radical change for all of society. I believe this. I think it's inevitable. Unlike other people, I think it's going to happen faster than others. I believe in a 3 to 5 year window, we're going to see a major overhaul of the way that society functions because of emerging technology. And I believe that you just played this clip of President Trump, and I believe that the Trump administration's forward-looking vision as it relates to unlocking American ingenuity for both artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency will play a critical role. We as a culture need regulation, but I don't look at it, and I know that you're going to get a little cuckoo with that word right now, but stick with me for a second and follow my logic. During the Biden administration, there was tons of uncertainty. The SEC chairman was a disaster. And as a result of the uncertainty, the lack of guidance, the lack of regulation, tons of investment dollars as well as talent went overseas. What President Trump is doing by putting together, he just launched this new executive order. He made it very clear we have a crypto and AI czar and David Sachs, and he's putting together teams to define how the AI space and the crypto space will work in America moving forward. This definitive guidance, this, let's say, a re-regulation of sorts, because I'm anti-regulation too, but this specific guidance is going to allow for billions of dollars in investment to flow in, which we're already seeing from companies like SoftBank, as well as talent coming back into America. And with that, we'll see tons of growth. What my book does for people is it lays out how they can use artificial intelligence to improve their career, their community, and their family today. Every section of my book breaks that down. If you are a beginner and you've never used AI, but you're hearing everybody talk about it, my book will provide you with the tools that you can use to enhance your career, your family, and your city today.
Okay, very intriguing. So we've done a special or two on artificial intelligence before, and just my instinct is it's more hesitant and I don't like this thing. Like it's a standoffish and cynical, whatever you want to call it. But now I'm starting to embrace this a little more and be like, okay, all right. First of all, if we don't use it, China will. And how can we really use it in a positive way? How can we use it as a tool like we use all the technologies you and I are using right now. So can you run through a couple of examples of how this can be used for good?
Okay, so practically speaking, from a very simplistic perspective, all of your viewers, all of your listeners, they could use artificial intelligence right now, like ChatGPT, for example, for search purposes. Let's face it, Google is about to be disrupted. When you and I and all of your listeners and viewers use Google, it's not really a great experience. In many ways, it's clunky and it's antiquated. You end up with tons of ads, you end up with tons of links, but it's not really answering your question. If you download ChatGPT right now and you use it regularly just for search purposes, you can put a ton more text and get a lot more detail out of it. So that's a good starting point. That's on the algorithm side. That's the software. On the hardware, this is another great area where people can get involved with AI in a safe way. Think in terms of creating efficiencies. Mike, I hear you always talking about creating efficiencies. Well, here's an area where people can take hardware like Nest and put it into their home and figure out how they could effectively regulate their temperature and save money, conserve. It's a great way to start. And then finally, what I think is really exciting as it relates to artificial intelligence is unlocking American ingenuity. Think, for example, with the creative fields. If you want to become a fashion designer, a filmmaker, a book writer, or perhaps even a music maker, there are tools that artificial intelligence has today where anybody from young children to octogenarians can access, and right now through text prompts create short films, they can write books, they could even launch their own fashion collection. I look at emerging technology, Mike, in a very interesting way. I see this sort of iron triangle. There are three components to this upcoming transformation of society. Artificial intelligence could create original content. So think in terms of product design, ad campaigns, messaging, and communications. The second part of the iron triangle is social media. And that's where the activation and the messaging can come through for the individual. And the third piece is cryptocurrency, where anybody could be paid in any way they like. And it's this iron triangle, AI, crypto, and social media, that's going to allow for those innovative dreamers, the individuals who want to become the next fashion designer, the next Hollywood filmmaker, the next writer, who don't have the capabilities of connecting with the Gucci's of the world or the MGMs of the world. Well, now in their home, on a very small budget, they have the ability to leverage this new technology and bring their vision to life and start a business on their own that will allow for them to generate wealth, create wealth.
Very good. Let's bring in now, you mentioned a couple American versions of this. What do you know about DeepSeek, the Chinese version of this? Is this a problem in your vision?
It's a big problem. So let me tell you, like the sheep Americans often are, we all chased the shiny object, DeepSeek, and it's a problem. We all went into it. It's a good product. They've built a good product, and I could get into the whole ecosystem and the NVIDIA piece of it also. But let me tell you the problem. Let me address this with you directly. The problem, Mike, is that the terms of service that everybody enters into, and keep in mind, this became the #1 most downloaded app on the Apple Store. Over 2 million people downloaded it right away. Huge numbers. The agreement for the user says that your data will be stored on a server in China. When that data is stored on a server in China, the Chinese government is permitted to access those servers and in turn access your data. So what does this mean? Mike, it's a big problem. All of the data that you put in to set up your account is now accessible by the Chinese government. Let's say, for example, a business leader is putting proprietary information, uploading or prompting DeepSeek with some proprietary information, and unknowingly puts in, let's say, critical information about how to run their business every single day. That information now is accessible by the Chinese government. So it could be your date of birth, your driver's license. It could be, trademarked information. As you're very well aware, the Chinese government really could care less about our intellectual property. So there are a lot of problems as it relates to privacy and security with DeepSeek.
Great point. We got about 60 seconds or so. We played this clip of Chamath talking about the need for American technological supremacy. Do we have that? Do you think we're at risk of losing it?
I believe that we are right now in a lead position. However, what DeepSeek showed us is that for both the hardware component as well as the software component, they're catching quickly. It's time for Americans to compete. If we want to lead, we can't only isolate them. Like Senator Hawley, I think you might be aware, is trying to create a protectionist type of bubble around American businesses in the AI space. We're not going to be effective there. We need to dig into American entrepreneurs, and we need to take the lead and beat them in the good old-fashioned way.
And do you think Trump's the guy to do this? Do you think he has the right mindset and vision?
100%. Not even an issue. 100%.
Super encouraging. Mark Beckman is here, CEO, DMA United. Go buy the book, Some Future Day, How AI is going to Change Everything, and you can personally use it in your life, the wisdom from that book. And if I could put a plug in, Mark, for an interview you did with Melania Trump, where can people find that and listen to that as well as buying your book?
So that was on my show, Some Future Day. It's on all major platforms, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate that.
Beautiful. Mark, great to talk to you. Some Future Day is the name of the book as well. Go get it. Thanks, Mark. Great to talk to you, brother. Hope we can do it again. Coming up next, we'll talk to Joe Allen, and we'll get his take on how we keep our technological supremacy and why it's so important. That's next right here on The First TV.
Once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person, design a vaccine for every individual person to vaccinate them against that cancer. And you can make that vaccine, that mRNA vaccine, you can make that robotically, again using AI, in about 48 hours. So imagine early cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future.
That's Larry Ellison, one of the richest men in the world, in the Oval Office just the other day. Gosh, it'd be so amazing to sit down 100 people and they can't see other people. I don't want to be influenced by anyone. Play that clip and get their initial first knee-jerk, like emotional gut response to that. Does that sound like an amazing medical breakthrough that's incredible, or is that terrifying? Joe Allen is here. Dark Eon is the name of the book. Transhumanism and the War Against Humanity. Joe, good to talk to you again, brother. What's your first take on just that use of artificial intelligence?
Well, that's one heck of an advertisement, isn't it? We will cure cancer. We will create God. We will subdue and replace you. We may destroy your entire human race. That's one of the strangest advertisements that any company has ever put forward, but that's what these AI companies and people like Larry Ellison, the whole constellation, that's what they're talking about.
Why the destruction of the human race? He's talking about solving cancer, not killing people.
He is. So let's start with that one. First off, I think there's every reason to be very skeptical of such a claim. If there's one thing Larry Ellison has learned over the years, surely it is how to sell people on a product. Curing cancer is as old an ambition as any, solving world hunger or any other sort of primal desire. I wouldn't look forward to artificial intelligence miraculously curing it, but what I would say is very likely, given the trajectory of the big pharma companies like Pfizer, especially Moderna, and others that are working in this space, since the mRNA vaccines, there has been use of artificial intelligence to accelerate the process of both drug discovery and also identifying useful mRNA sequences and rolling them out. Moderna really spearheaded this. Pfizer jumped on seeing the competition. All of this comes out of DARPA with a lot of funding from Bill Gates, but What Larry Ellison's talking about just kind of clicks it up a notch. Instead of curing COVID, which without getting you banned from YouTube, let's just say that the results on that project were mixed. Now it's curing cancer. This is going to keep coming in these sorts of uses of AI, and especially the projected uses of AI to solve all of your health problems, to make doctors into super doctors, soldiers into super soldiers, teachers into super teachers. All of this is going to come full blast.
Okay. Why is it fundamentally different than any other technological advancement? Artificial intelligence, right? So you talked about going from human to superhuman. Well, for a while we could only walk with our feet, and then we invented trains, and then cars, and now airplanes, and now Elon wants to shoot people on rockets around the world to land on different, air strips, like rocket strips, whatever. So we're moving faster. Why can't we think faster, think smarter, be better? Why can't artificial intelligence be like any other technological jump?
It is part of a continuum. So everything from the printed text to telecommunications via first wires, then satellites, television, on and on and on. And of course, the personal computer, the internet, smartphones, social media, all of these form a continuum. Artificial intelligence is now at the apex of that continuum. In fact, builds on a lot of those because it's hoovering up the data provided by the internet and digitized texts, and also personal communications. So I think that it is different in a number of ways. The first way that artificial intelligence is different from previous modes of software is that instead of it being just purely rules-based, there's a huge degree of uncertainty, of non-deterministic programming involved, meaning that AIs aren't bound by the same sorts of rules as your Excel spreadsheet. You can ask an AI the same question multiple times, and it will come back with different answers. This is because it's built to arrive at its own conclusions within certain parameters, right? Within certain degrees of control, biases, and all of that. Another part of it, it's oftentimes said that AIs aren't programmed so much as grown, right? They grow like a plant. Machine learning means that instead of just simply having a rules-based program to go over your data set and spit out reliable or predictable answers at the other end, machine learning kind of grows in its own directions, in the way that the data, the patterns it finds in the data. That may seem strange and abstract, but the real point is that artificial intelligence has degrees of freedom, and it also arrives at certain patterns that humans wouldn't be able to see otherwise. A classic example is AlphaGo, and followed up by AlphaZero, the Google AI that was able to dominate at the Chinese board game Go. People forever said you would never have an AI that could do it at all. Now AI is a yet another kind of stone wall against which humans can beat their skills against, but will never overcome. And it wasn't that they just programmed it to play Go well. With AlphaZero, it taught itself how to play Go and still dominates human beings. Kind of extrapolate that out to other areas. What you're talking about is a technology that, if you are to believe Elon Musk, and I don't believe anything that comes out of these guys' mouths at face value, but if you are to believe Elon Musk or Sam Altman or Masayoshi Son, who spoke there alongside Sam Altman and Larry Ellison on the second day of Trump's term in office, then we're going to have artificial general intelligence by 2030, meaning that you would then have a superhuman machine that could think, that could do any cognitive task you could do, but better. In fact, do any cognitive task any human being could do, but better. That is, I would say, light years beyond the internet in ambition. And if anything, even approximating that were to come into being, it would rapidly replace all white-collar jobs, or most white-collar jobs, rendering people to be, at best, babysitters for the AI that their company has given them.
Yes. Okay. what would your advice be to Donald Trump? You bumped into him in the hallway. Oh, Mr. President. What would your advice be to be in this realm, particularly knowing the people that he has surrounded himself with, right? He likes that Japanese guy that you mentioned, the Sam Altmans, Elon, of course. So you got these big AI guys who are definitely in his ear. And he wants to win. He wants that technological supremacy. That's his mindset. What's your advice to him?
Maybe the most critical aspect, I just got to preface this, maybe the most critical sphere, domain that artificial intelligence is going to be needed in is in national security. To the extent that it's effective, you're going to want your nation's AI to be better at raking over surveillance data and operating weapon systems and so on and so forth. So, Mr. Trump, please utilize these technologies as they're necessary to protect America, to ensure that our interests are served and that our economy flourishes, but do not allow corporations or government agencies to turn these inward as they have been done for decades on the population. It is not necessary to turn us into cyborgs in order to win in the geopolitical game.
Interesting. Okay, we got about a minute. What do you think of DeepSeek and China's version of this? My opening argument was, if I could have my druthers, I'd say no AI. But the question is, if you can't stop it, wouldn't it be better for us to maintain supremacy over China maintaining supremacy? So that's the question. It's not either or, it's which.
Well, in the race to the top, it seems that we're going to pop out the other end on the bottom, at least on a moral level. But that being said, three areas you want to think about. Big tech, that being Google, OpenAI, so on and so forth. Little tech, those startups that Mark Andreessen is always talking about. And you could say that Elon Musk, in a sense, is part of that too, because he's so adversarial with big tech. And then you have China. These three competing spheres are what we're looking at. And so DeepSeek undermined big tech. That showed that China is at least competitive in the AI realm, no matter how derivative DeepSeek's R1 is, and no matter how dishonest they may be about the numbers, how expensive it was, the infrastructure used to train it. But it served two purposes. One, it undermined big tech and showed that China is competitive, but also by undermining big tech, and especially by dropping the NVIDIA value so much, it may open up a lot of space for little tech, for startups to get a foothold. This is why Mark Andreessen is so excited about DeepSeek. At least I believe that's his reasoning. And so you have to think of it in those spheres. The way to think about AI is not as one big new world order, certainly not yet. The way to think about AI is a cacophony of cooperation, yes, but largely competition. They are clawing over each other's backs for the so-called ring of power.
Yes, Dark Eon is the book. Transhumanism and the War Against Humanity. Read this, get a better understanding than almost anyone on this. Joe Allen, good to talk to you, brother.
Thank you very much.
Keep it up. Joe talked about flying out the top so high to win that you're going to pop out the bottom. Let's talk about that. Losing of our morals. Or let's talk about maintaining our morals throughout this whole revolution. We'll do that next right here on the First TV. Spread the word. Welcome back to our special, The Future for Artificial Intelligence. Donald Trump big on AI and crypto. I'm still hesitant in some ways, but again, the argument I've been making throughout the show is it's not should we have it or shouldn't. It's should we have it or should China? Okay, whenever I get anxious or overwhelmed or I don't know how to think about a thing like this, I always go back to the Bible. So let's do our politics by faith section on this topic. One thing to keep in mind is that many of the people who are behind artificial intelligence think that they are God. Well, first, they don't think there is God, so there's no God. So in their worldview, because they're so powerful and so rich, they like now they're God. They could just become God, or they can create a thing, artificial intelligence, that can become God. But, well, here's what, to give you an example. The Gutenberg Bible, the Gutenberg printing press in 1440, first printed the Bible. There's Johannes right there. Okay, so he made the printing press, and the first book that it printed was the Bible. Okay, great. But it couldn't create content, right? It could just make copies of something. It couldn't write new work. So all these AI people today, like Yuval Harari and stuff like that, they're like, every religion says their holy book was written by some superhuman intelligence. And now they think that they created their own superhuman intelligence that can write a new holy book, if you will, for us to live by. That's what these people think. And they think they're the ones to do it. They're the great creators of the all-knowing AI. Now, there's nothing new under the sun, right? What I just explained right there is the story of the Tower of Babel. Right? The people back during the Tower of Babel, they came up with a new technology, bricks. And they said in Genesis 11:4, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves." It wasn't the bricks that were the problem. God did not scatter them because they made bricks. It was the bricks and the pride of making a name for ourselves that was the problem. Technology isn't bad in and of itself, right? Cain and Abel, they both used different technologies. They used different tools, right? One to work the ground, another to hunt animals. Those are technologies. Neither of the tools they used were sinful, but murdering your brother is. So the first thing, nothing new under the sun. Second, it's all about how you use the technology that matters. Third, to go back to the you're all guy, nothing can be bigger than God, no matter how powerful AI becomes. Nothing can threaten God's omnipotence, and nothing surprises God. That's another thing I got to remind myself every once in a while. Like, God is not sitting back, or I shouldn't say sitting back. Like, God's not on the edge of his seat being like, oh, what are they going to do now? Oh no, they're about to invent something that could be stronger than me. I didn't see this coming at all. He saw everything coming. He knows everything that is coming. And he's also sovereign over all things. So, there's so much uncertainty about AI and how it's going to be used and the dystopian future that may come. But none of it's going to catch God off guard. And none of it changes any of God's promises for now or eternity. Makes sense? That's really important to understand. We're in a time of uncertainty, but none of that should affect the certainty of God's promises for your life now and for all of eternity. God will provide for you. Jesus will return. Everything else is still true, no matter how powerful AI gets. AI will never be able to change the truth of the Bible. Now, AI can make things more deceitful, right? Make it trickier to determine what is true living in a world. But that's why we need to step up and make sure that we know what is true so that it doesn't work on us. Colossians 2:8, see to it that no one takes you captive. I don't want to be held captive. Do you want to be taken captive? I don't. Be captive by what? Captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Christ. AI makes it all the more important for us to be on guard against this empty deceit. The Greek word there, empty, it means having no spiritual value, lacking the fruits of the Spirit. That's what that means. That's a problem for us now. Right? We have a problem now with being held captive by empty philosophies and human cunning and thinking and deceit. So we better get that under control now, because it's only going to get worse with AI. I'll throw one more thing in here, and we kind of touched on it with Joe Allen a bit. I don't trust Silicon Valley people and their worldview at all. I don't see how they've proven themselves to be people that we should listen to for about anything. I still hold Silicon Valley responsible for a lot of the madness with COVID. Let's go back to the beginning, like February 2020. The first time I heard of COVID was Tom Cotton. And he mentioned it in some committee hearing. And my initial response was like, whatever, China has no toilets. It's not a big deal. Like, that's their problem, not our problem, right? And the first people to really come out and say this is a massive deal were people in Silicon Valley. And they got me. I was held captive. They got me. These are guys with some authority and they're good with numbers and they had vision or something. And I valued the opinion of people in Silicon Valley because they were in Silicon Valley. And it took me a while to realize that they were putting out graphs with no numbers on them to try and shut the country down. Remember talking about flattening the curve and hospital capacity and all that nonsense? That was all out of Silicon Valley. And a lot of just work from home, no big deal, shut it down, everyone can work from home. That came from Silicon Valley because the guys who did that were all working for Twitter. But they didn't think that maybe doesn't apply to everyone else in the rest of the country. But they're like, whatever, just give everyone money. Like a lot of that was Silicon Valley. And a lot of that's because they have a different view on money in Silicon Valley than is real. So they're like, whatever, just print money, no big deal. So I still hold them accountable for that. My point is be wary of Silicon Valley people because in general, they don't care about people. John Mulvaney, the comedian, he was speaking at some tech conference in San Francisco. And he said, he got up on stage, he goes, let me get this straight. You're hosting, it was in San Francisco. He said, you're hosting a future of AI event in a city that has failed humanity so miserably. He said, you look like a group of people who looked at the self-checkout counters at CVS and thought, this is the future. Just look at San Francisco and find out, and you can determine if you think San Franciscan people are the ones who should be ushering us into the future. So anyway, that's just a bit of an aside, but we need to be careful of people's worldviews. Adam and Eve were instructed to exercise dominion over the earth. And we're called to do the same. We need to be good stewards of everything around us. And AI is no different. It's new, that's for sure, but it's no different. And the question remains, how much have you turned technology into your slave versus how much are you a slave to it? If you are already a slave to your phone, then it's going to be tough for you to fight against AI. So let's make sure that we are a slave to Christ first, and then we have a better chance of making technology a tool that we can keep under our control. And nationwide, this is more reason than ever that our founders, they were right, that this country is only possible with a moral and religious people. The more godless of a nation we are, the more people will try to fill that God-sized hole. And AI is one thing that they're going to try to fill it with. All the more reason to know the truth and know the true God before AI becomes so dominant that so many people let in this false God as their savior. Slater Radio on Twitter and Instagram. Mike Slater, The First TV. Spread the word.